And thank you through the chair. This meeting is now being streamed. And Chair, you're muted.
That's got to happen at least one last time. Okay. It is 9:03 on November the 25th of 2022, and I am calling to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, with my congratulations to those of us who will be returning to our municipal councils, and my congratulations also to those of us who will not, for making the effort and serving our communities with dignity and grace. Thank you so much for all you have done, and for your support for the Conservation Authority. There are we thought we went through challenging days, and somebody said, hold my buck of beer. So here we are. I'm calling this meeting to order by acknowledging that the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority is situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, the Saulteaux, the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and Algonquin, who spoke several languages, including Anishinaabeg-Moan and Potawatomi. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect for all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. Are there any declarations of pecuniary or conflict of interest at this time from members of the board? I see none. And so that brings us through items 6, 7, 8, and 9, because there are no announcements, presentations, deputations, or hearings. And so we'll head straight to our consent list, which is item number 10. Oh, you know what we probably have to do, though, is adopt the adopt the agenda. And so I'm looking, we decided today, because we were not sure of who was going to arrive and whether we might have quorum, we didn't assign the movers and seconders today. And so I'm looking for a motion. Thank you, Member Allen and Member Kane. That's the last time I'll get that wrong. I'm sorry. For the mover and seconder for moving the agenda, and if we could vote on that through our on board. I'm just flipping screens, and we have some on screen as well. So Member Kane and Member Boxham and Member Allen and Member Mangtalo and Member Pinto. So I'm assuming that that passes with the majority of those present. Thank you, Director Flanagan. And so we have two items which we're adopting the consent list now. So if you can go to vote on that as well, unless there is some other item other than item 12.2.4 and 12.2.6, which is being asked to be pulled. And I see two hands up. Vice Chair Little, start with you.
Yes, thank you. I would like to also pull item 12.2.5, which is about Bill 23, only because the bill seems to be changing daily, and I just wanted to give staff an opportunity to provide us with any updates that they wanted to contribute. But I also wondered, in doing that, if we could deal with the other two items first, just in case we lose quorum, 12.2.4, 12.2.6.
Absolutely. Member Jebb. You are on mute. Your hand is up, though. Are you having some difficulty with your... Oh, Donna can't find the agenda. It is, if you hit open book on your onboard, it should open up for you. So the same page that you used to get to the Zoom, and then you do the agenda there. Any luck? Okay, well, while we do that, while Donna looks for that, we will see if there are any other items that require pulling. Is there anybody else who has an item that needs pulling? Okay, so let's vote on that then. And it's a yes from me. I'm having trouble getting over to my voting as well.
I'm having difficulty. It's the sound is behind. The sound is ahead. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I can't figure out. Okay, and the sound is coming ahead of the video.
Oh. Okay. I can't help you with. I'm sorry to report. So it may be that you want to turn off your video then.
It's showing approvals from back the meeting before.
Okay.
Okay,
So through the chair, yeah, if member Jeb could turn off her video, that will help her. It's probably going to take her a minute to get that back to her. And then with regards to on board, I mean, we don't have very many members here right now. So if we just want to do the voting on screen, I'm good with that as well.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. That's excellent, Director Flanagan. Okay, so the adoption of the consent list and identification of items requiring separate discussion. Resolved that agenda item numbers 12.2.4, 12.2.5, and 12.2.6 have been identified as requiring separate discussion. Further, that all consent agenda items not referred for separate discussion be adopted as submitted to the board, and staff be authorized to take all necessary action required to give effect to same. And further, that any items in the consent list not referred for separate discussion and for which conflict has been declared or deemed not to have been voted on or discussed by the individual making the declaration. I need a mover for that, please. Thank you, Member Boxham, and seconded by Member Allen. And let's vote on that one. And that passes. Excellent. Thank you very much. So item 12.2.4, please, which is staff report number 45-09-22 BOD from Chris Hibbard, the Director of Watershed Management Services. And this is about some housekeeping changes regarding planning and permitting review fees. Chris, Director Hibbard.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The intent of the report is to really consolidate the existing fees that we have into one document. There will be some changes to the Conservation Authorities Act. This was basically before even Bill 23 had contemplating any changes. So we have some guidance tools that Conservation Ontario provided, as well as the province called the Minister's List. And it outlines the services that we can charge fees for. So we have brought all our fees. We took the planning document or planning policy document as a base. We expanded it. We've added things like weddings. We've added things like education, conservation area fees. All our existing fees are now in one document. And we've also outlined the process for reconsideration, appeals in certain circumstances. So that's the nature of the change. We also notified our stakeholders and our municipal partners of what we were doing at this meeting.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah. And anybody else out? Vice Chair Little.
I did see Donna Jebb with her hand raised as well. I'm not sure if she had a question. But my question is going to be, given that the rates will be frozen in 2023, have we adjusted for a cost of living at all in our plan fees?
We did not account for that in this document.
So it could be possible that we could add a cost of living adjustment at this time?
We would certainly take direction from the board in that regard.
Thank you, Vice Chair Little. Is there an amendment then that you're thinking of for this when the time comes?
Yes, I would put forward a motion that would add a clause, and I could put forward that motion if you wished, if there were no other questions.
Let's see if there's any other questions or comments regarding this, and then when I introduce it, I'll turn to you for an amendment. Any other questions or comments regarding this report, item 12.2.4? Okay, so we will bring forward then the resolution. Resolved that the Board of Directors receive staff report number 45-09-22 BOD regarding proposed housekeeping changes to planning and permitting review fees, and further that the fee policy, which includes appendices A to F, fee schedules, be approved as attached. I'm going to need a mover and a seconder for that, please.
Madam Chair, I think that doesn't Gail want to add the amendment to it?
Yeah, we have to get it on the table first.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so Member Nickel and Member Kane. And then I believe that there's an amendment coming from Vice Chair Little.
Yes, thanks. I think it would be considered a friendly amendment. So I would add the words further that a 2% cost of living adjustment be added to all fees listed in the schedule effective December the 1st, 2022.
I'll look to our mover and seconder to see if they feel as though that is a friendly amendment. Member Nickel is fine with it. Member Kane is fine with it. Excellent. So that means we're going to, we don't need to vote on it. On the amendment, we will merely vote on the motion as amended. And so all of those in favor, we're just doing hands. That looks to be passed. Director Flanagan, we good? Excellent. 12.2.4. We're going to jump to 12.2.6 at the chair's discretion because we want to deal with this just in case somebody loses their connection. 12.2.6 is staff report number 47-09-22-BOD from Doug Havner, the CAO. Doug.
Thank you through the chair, if I may. This is going to be a housekeeping request. This report goes through for January 1st of this year, and we were uncertain as to whether we were going to get quorum for this meeting or quorum for the next meeting. So in the report, I've identified that I have meetings scheduled for December. I'd like to be able to go through and just correct that after the fact, that I have met with the people, like meeting with Mulmer, Mono, Agilitas, Collingwood, and Innisfil, just to make it in the proper tense. So when we make our report, it's all legit and been approved by the board. So with your permission, I'd like to be able to just change that verbiage from the current tense to the past tense before I submit the report. And that's really all there is to it on that aspect. We are meeting, and I anticipate these meetings will be ramped up from the new year moving forward. We are starting to do some co-meetings. We're meeting with TRCA and Mono and TRCA and Agilitas. We've been in contact with their CAOs. We've had some introductory meetings recently with Innisfil, went quite well. Most of the people that we talked to, in fact, all the people we've talked to so far have been very supportive of what we proposed. We will see some budget changes in the new year as legislation passes. So that will be something that will be amended into the situation. Chris has been very active on the planning advisory front. You're all aware that we have 13 out of 18 of our municipalities. We currently have planning and advisory MOUs. We've been outreach to the 5 that we don't have currently in place, and they've been receptive to how we do things. We will have to morph these amendments to accommodate changes to wetland management and natural heritage features if that legislation still passes. So that's my report for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have a question from Member Jeb.
Sure.
So through the chair, sorry, I just messaged you. That's old video. Her video is way behind on the sound. So that was actually her voting.
Okay.
You can ignore that. I have her on chat and she's keeping me up to date with making sure I'm counting her votes and not.
That's amazing. Okay. And I'm certain that I saw the member of provincial parliament announcing increased broadband support for the south end of Simcoe Grey, but clearly it hasn't taken effect yet. All right. Does anyone have any questions or concerns or comments for CAO? Okay, I see none. And so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the following motion. And that is that staff report 470902, CAO resolved that the update on memoranda of understanding and Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority's progress report be received. And further that NVCA's Board of Directors approves this progress report in fulfillment of the 3rd progress report to be submitted to the province by January 1, 2022 23, I'm assuming that I think there's a typo in this printing, as required by Ontario Regulation 687/21 transition plans and agreements for programs and services under section 21.1.2 of the Act. And so with that amendment to take out January 1, 2022 and turn it into 2023, I will look for a mover. Thank you, Member Boxham, and a seconder, Member Allen. And I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And then that passes. Super, thank you so much. And that brings us to 12.2.5, staff report number 46-09-22 BOD from Chris Hibbard, Director, excuse me, of Watershed Management Services. And I will look to Chris, Director Hibbard.
I will do this in tag team with Mr. Hevner because he's got a lot of inside information as well. I will focus on interests of conservation authorities. This bill is very large. It has many things that it's looking to change, and that includes the Planning Act, the Conservation Authorities Act, other matters such as the wetland evaluation system, provincial policy statement, the green belt, and you've seen many of these things in the media already. Some of the biggest changes to the Conservation Authorities Act is in Bill 23, which is going to third reading now. So they've finished their standing committee. Conservation Ontario was able to make a deputation or a presentation. But I did note that other agencies such as who made a request like Grey County or AMO weren't afforded the same opportunities. So I found that interesting. So for Conservation Authority, one of the biggest changes is where we would focus our efforts. And the province wants us to focus on our mandatory services. And one of the biggest changes from that is natural heritage. And one of the changes that they're right now is being proposed to the Act is restricting our ability to do those kind of services, but also enter into agreements for those types of services. So what affects us actually trickles down and affects the municipalities. So in cases of natural heritage, you may not be able to rely on the Conservation Authority in the same way that you have historically through planning your own. So that's one of the key things. Some of the other things, the Ontario Wetland Evaluation changes, these are some ERO postings. That is significant in terms of how we evaluate wetlands. And many of our wetlands, and I can't remember the number off the top of my head, I think it was 34, 35, provincially significant wetlands in our watershed are, many of them become provincially significant because they're complex. So now they're moving away from a complexing way of looking at wetlands and looking at the individual systems, meaning many of those wetlands may not be provincially significant, and that could change how they're protected and how they're looked at in the future. Those are some of the key and big things. There are other things. They're changing definitions in the Act. They are looking at enabling legislation that would allow the minister to freeze our fees in the future. They're also looking at enabling legislation that would allow maybe some Planning Act developments or proposals to be exempt from our permitting process. Those raise questions from all conservation authorities about that puts a lot of pressure on municipalities in terms of what comes to that natural hazards and takes away from some of our core mandate. Those are some of the high level ones, and certainly ask Doug to step in and sort of fill in the gaps that I haven't addressed.
Doug? Did CAO Hebner go for a coffee? Oh, no, there he is.
I think he's having difficulties, so he's going to come use my computer.
I should have just kept talking.
Bring me up to speed here because I haven't heard a lot of it. It's cutting in and out. So is there a question for me, or you're looking for comment from me, or?
Yeah, just we've covered all the high spots in terms of what the impacts of conservation authorities are. It's gone to third reading. We talked about the wetland evaluation. There's numerous environmental registry postings that we're coordinating with Conservation Ontario. Anything beyond that, I think.
Did you speak to Conservation Ontario's CAO's comments on how all of the talking points she hit on during her talk with the committee will all be handled through regulation, which is a really good thing for conservation authorities in that hopefully they can reinstate the conservation authorities working group with AMO and BILD and have a really good dialogue on how these regulations will be formed. We can't change the legislation, but we can have a great impact on how they hit the road and how they're handled by each person. There's been a lot of talk at the general managers meetings. We've had several. We've been meeting weekly to bi-weekly for the last few months. It's interesting. There's a tremendous disconnect immediately with legislation when the transfer from MECP moved into NRNF. It's almost like the voices stopped talking. We had tremendous communication with Minister York. We had tremendous communication with Minister Mancini, and we just haven't seen that with the Minister Smith in his new role. We're hoping that will improve, but we'll have to wait and see. So I don't really have anything to add on the changes.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Vice Chair Little.
I would just have a question, if I may. Is there anything that we should or could be doing at our respective councils to address these issues?
Through the chair, if I may, there are tremendous opportunities for council or councillors or individual residents across the watershed to participate in the ERO process. The EROs were many of them were supposed to come through completion in November, December 30th, I think was the latest one. The earlier MOUs, with the exception of the wetland evaluation system, it's going through on date, and I believe it's closed now. Chris, am I correct on that one, or is it still open? Go ahead.
Through the chair, there was, and I can't remember the total number, there was numerous postings on the registry. Some had a 30-day commenting period and some had 60. So 60 would put you into the end of December. Many of the ones with 30 have been extended to 45. So there's still opportunities for that. Please, feel free to have a look at the report. There are other ERO postings, sorry, and I'd be happy to help any of the staff or the municipalities in identifying some of those. I think the county of Simcoe has done a good job in talking about Bill 23 and some of those matters as well.
I believe some of those are a moving target as well, and they've changed several times, even, and depending on the website to which you look, you might see a different date. So
through the chair, if I may, there have been many letters submitted to us from NGOs across the province. If you are wanting more information, you can reach out directly to Maria and she could direct you on how to access the ERO. It's very user-friendly. It's sort of a touch point entry. You can either paste your message or you can drop in a document from your computer's C drive. It's very simple. You'll get a notification back from the government saying that they've received your information. We are not coming out and condemning anything that's happening here. We're coming out and saying we understand and appreciate a need for homes across Ontario. And I think everyone that's commented basically starts with that. We're all aware of that. What we have done in our submission for our OES, the wetland submission, is pointed out the fact that the scoring system for wetlands is changing. We live in a puddle here in the Simcoe County wetland. It's a riverine system that's down in a basin, and it's tremendously driven by wetlands. Of our 34 provincially sensitive wetlands that are identified right now, 33 of those are complexes. And through this new legislation, complexes won't be considered.
So a complex is a collection of, and I'll use the term puddles just to make it seem simpler, a collection of puddles that equals the size of 2 hectares. And a polygon of 2 hectares is what they're going to be looking at now. One undisturbed feature that's 2 hectares in size. So this will have tremendous impacts on the blueprint or the imprint that development can have on the landscape. Right now, when you are working around a complex, we have those buffers and setbacks from those complexes and those wetland features. Those will be not considered as one big unit anymore, so they can be extracted. And there's also a movement forward by the government to step in and operate with one large umbrella, an offsetting policy for the province of Ontario. We at the NVCA have approved an offsetting policy, which we have used effectively when we just can't come to an agreement with the development with the municipality. The movement's going to move forward. The feature, whether it be natural heritage, whether it be wetland feature, is going to be lost. And we can negotiate funds so that we can at least remediate or mitigate some of that loss across the landscape in tree planting to improve a buffer, in natural grassland plantings to improve a riparian bank or zone, the great work that Fred's doing in restoration for stream banks for erosion. So these are all things that are in play as well. Right now, there are only 4 conservation authorities in the province of Ontario that have policies on natural offsetting. So it's important work that's happening now. And you know, you're in a really good position to comment on this. You've all been involved for the last 4 years. You've had an opportunity to really see the issues that face our environment across the province. You know the development that's needed in your area, in your part of the world. And I just encourage you to comment. I think you're in a very good position to do that. If you need help for formulating your comments, we have staff here that are prepared to lend a hand in that respect. Thank you.
Director Hibbard.
I just noticed in the chat, member Jeb is asking if my report can be brought forward to the Agricultural Committee. It's already on their agenda for discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. That was my next thing. I wonder, member Magdalo has a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, with respect to municipalities being involved in commenting, I just like to throw my thoughts behind this. I think it's there's a potential for us influence, I think, or call it pressure on the government, just by virtue of numbers. And I know our municipality has been very sent comments, and I sent an email around to approximately 70 of my friends, asking them and telling them how to make a comment, making it easier for them. I know that as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, the town of Caledon is having an emergency council meeting to deal with this, to try and understand it and how best to respond to it. So I really think that the municipalities have a big place in putting their influence forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And in response to that as well, what I can say is if you're looking for even further understanding, the staff report that was put together for the County of Simcoe for their meeting that was held last week was excellent and very comprehensive. And it also for those of us who are trying to understand just what's in here. Now, there have been changes, as you heard from the CAO in the last few days. However, for an excellent overview as well, the county report was really great. Are there any other questions? I have a couple, actually. Anyone else have questions? Okay, so CA Hubner, I wonder if you could just speak for a moment or two about one of the provisions contained within Bill 23, which has to do with Conservation Authority lands and lands being taken I'm not quite sure I understand exactly, or that we as a board understand the implications. We own somewhere around 13,000 hectares in the Nottawasaga Valley. The Conservation Authority owns 13,000 hectares. What are the implications of what's contained within this bill or any other of the recent legislation on those lands? If you could speak to that for a moment, please.
Certainly, through the chair, if I may. Byron and Kyra have been working on an inventory since this legislation passed. We have until 2024 to complete an inventory. What this legislation has done is it has made a request to that inventory to identify developable lands within the land holdings of the conservation authorities. We have 13, I'm sorry, I'm just going to correct the chair if I could, and I always make this mistake as well. It's acres, not hectares that we have. So we have 13,000 plus acres of land, of which between 7,000 acres are situated in Minising wetlands. So the majority of our land, in fact, we haven't paid for land. It's all been acquired through donation over the years. So there's a lot of people that have donate land to conservation authorities. If we go up into the Midhurst area near the new development that's going on right now, there's a 184 acre section, a beautiful sugar bush that was donated by a family in Oromadante. They saw this as an opportunity to keep green space in perpetuity. So we have to identify, could that place possibly be built on? So we have to look at what are the encumbrances that sit on these lands. Is there something that was written at the time when the gift was made that restricts future development of this? Would there be opportunities to partner with land trusts to provide some type of encumbrance on this? Many of the donations that we have might have been associated with the Section 39, which would involve a federal donation of land. There's some really heavy and severe tax implications that I think would make purchasing or reselling that land cumbersome for someone that wanted to develop it from a cost recovery perspective. But to make it simple, if we look at Tiffin, we've all been to Tiffin and we say, well, we have to identify properties there. If we were going to identify properties on our front, we'd go out and we could identify frontage along the 8th line that could piecemeal houses in a sprawl. So when we look at comments that you may have seen in the paper where this is an opportunity for urban sprawl to really perpetuate across the landscape, this is how it could happen. So you imagine 36 conservation authorities, the second largest landholders in the province, all having linear properties in areas. There could be great potential for those to be on the open market. Fortunately, much of the land that conservation authorities acquire is what we'll call the leftover pieces. Development occurs, and there's portions of that development parcel that just aren't effective for a development. They're not effective for parkland space. The municipality doesn't want to take them on into their land holdings. The province has no desire to take them on into land holdings. The developer wants to divest of the time on that site, take their profit and move on and create more homes. And that's what a well-minded business would do. So many times we acquire these properties, and many of those spaces are not really suitable for build outs. So that's how it's going to affect us. We will do a very fulsome inventory, and that inventory will be brought back to the board before it's submitted. So you'll all have an opportunity to see what we're there. I'm just going to, if I could, through the chair, pass this over to Byron and have him comment as well. This is his billywhack, so I don't want to steal his thunder.
Byron. Oh, you're on mute.
You're muted, Byron.
Thank you. Sorry about that. And through the chair, Doug, I think you've covered most of it. But in regards to layers of protection, Doug did note a property in Springwater Township. Member Allen will know it well. It's just down the road from his place. It's the 114 acre Dunsmore property that was donated to us, a very valuable piece of property, was donated to us with a legal agreement that stipulated no development is to take place on this property. So that's one layer of protection, but it was also an eco gift through the federal government. So I've been in discussions with the federal government in regards to these eco gifts, of which we have 2 or 3 of them. And that's a layer of protection for us as well, in where if the government said, yes, we want that 114 acres, we want to build on it, it would have to be, they would have to buy it. We would have to pay 50% of the taxes, current market value. So that property is well in excess of $1 million right now. So it's, obviously going to cause us hardships. So it's being looked at by conservation authorities and the federal government as a layer of protection along with others that we have. We had still talking about that property, we had taken the position of, Doug noted that the Midhurst development is directly across the road from this land. And so our future plans were to actually turn it into a recreational area for those thousands of people. I mean, it just makes sense where it's all houses. Why wouldn't we want to put in a trail system, et cetera? You know, we've got a local Rotary Club that's very, very interested in that. So we're moving along. But in my mind, other than the Section 30 lands that were actually acquired by provincial dollars back in the 60s and 70s, being Tottenham, Utopia, New Lowell, we don't have a lot of properties that are good for growing houses. They're just in the middle of menacing wetlands, as you know, or sitting on top of a cliff, Niagara Escarpment. Maybe that would be of value, but anyways, like Doug had said, December 24 or 2024, there will be an inventory out, and I guess our recommendations would come forward if we actually had any that would be suitable for houses.
Thank you. That final crop. Yeah. Any other? Thank you for those comments and for that education. Are there any questions that have arisen from those comments? Okay, so seeing none, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for 12.2.5, staff report number 46-09-22 BOD from Chris Hibbard, Director of Watershed Management Services. Resolved that the Board of Directors received staff report 46-09-022-22-BOD regarding Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster Act and related ERO postings. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Member Magdalo and Member Allen. All those in favor? And I believe that passes. Excellent. Okay, that leads us to other business. Are there any items of other business from the members of the board? Vice Chair Little.
Yes, thank you. I know that you expressed appreciation at the beginning of the meeting, Chair McLeod, but I also just want to express my appreciation. And I wanted to do it at this meeting because some of you may not be here for our January meeting. And I think we're planning perhaps not to have the December meeting. Is that okay? So anyway, I just some of the members of our group here that I've got to know a little bit or a little bit more will no longer, through planned or unplanned retirements, be members. And so I just wanted to express my appreciation to them for their work and their contribution to their communities and to the NVCA board. It's been great, and I want to encourage you to keep your passions alive and continue to support the valuable work that the conservation authorities do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair Little. Doug.
Through the chair, if I may, I would just like to make everyone aware of a funding campaign that we've launched at the NVCA. It's a funding to try to deliver $10,000 in funding for our educational programs, restoration programs. It closes on the 29th of November. To date, we've received just in excess of $1,600 in donations. If you want to leave a nice parting gift as a memory of your time on the board of directors, I encourage you to consider making a donation. It's tax refundable, and I'll put on my hat there. I'm happy to say that my wife and I donated $100 to the cause, and we're happy to do so. And any support we could receive would be tremendously appreciated. And I'd just like to take this time to thank all of you for your participation. It's been wonderful getting to know and meet all of you. And you have played a very vital and important role in conservation across the Simcoe County, Mulmer, and Grey counties. And if it wasn't for your time to step forward and stand on council and give freely of your time and come here and have really honest and open dialogue with one another about issues, and some issues are challenging for some and maybe not as well understood by others, but you've all stepped up and you've really helped us, and our chair's guidance has been much appreciated. And I just want to thank our vice chair as well for the time that I've had. I have more opportunities to interact with the chair and vice chair than I have had with members individually. For those of you that I haven't had tremendous communication or lots of communication with over the last 4 years of your term, I wish you well. I'm sorry that we didn't have more opportunities to speak. It's been a wonderful time meeting all of you, and I'm going to step out in November. It's Thanksgiving, so I can say Merry Christmas or have a happy holiday season to you. So take care.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for your kind words, Gail and Doug. And I do like that phrase, unplanned retirement. There we go. So with that, any other business? Okay. And so I will look to Member Jeb for a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn. I'm finally now getting the voice and the video together right at the end of the meeting.
Well,
talk about trying to confuse me, but I see I have a light over my head. So maybe that's just, me coming through. But I make the motion that we adjourn at 9:44. Not as good as last meeting, Marion, but pretty close.
I do like to keep it tight. And so I don't think I've forgotten whether we need a seconder for adjournment. I think we do. There you go. Member Kane, thank you so much. And all those in favor. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for your service. We do require you in January in order to pass over the baton or the gavel, as it were. And I believe there will be snacks.
Yes.
So snacks and fellowship. So,
and we are canceling our December meeting because we were able to have this one. So enjoy your holiday season, everybody. And you'll get an invitation and information about our AGM in January. We hope we see you there.
Quick question, Cheryl. Will it be
in person?
In person? Ooh, I might be away.
Oh no.
all right, there you go.
For the old meeting, not the new meeting.